Chapter 5. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office occupied a building that tried desperately to look like it belonged in the 21st century. It was all glass and steel, clean architectural lines, and a flagpole out front snapping the stars and stripes against a sky the color of a dirty oyster. But the employee parking lot told the real story. Rows of Crown Victorias and Ford Explorers baked in the sun, their paint worn thin by a decade of brutal summers. Hubcaps were missing. Bumpers carried scuffs from 1,000 trips down roads that ate patrol cars for breakfast. Bodirt parked his truck in a spot marked Visitor and sat behind the wheel for a minute, letting the engine cool down. The metal ticked and popped, the sound of a machine pushed too hard and asking for a break it wasn't going to get. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the disposable camera, and checked the plastic casing. The film was intact. 9 faces. 7 cufflinks. 1 empty slot. He climbed out, crossed the blistering asphalt, and pushed through the heavy glass doors into air conditioning so aggressive it made his skin tighten. The lobby was cavernous and empty, save for a desk sergeant sitting behind a pane of bulletproof acrylic. Her hair was the color of steel wool, and she wore her reading glasses perched at the very tip of her nose, looking down at paperwork that seemed to personally disappoint her. "Help you?" she asked, not looking up. "Need to see whoever's running the Wembley missing persons case." The sergeant finally raised her eyes, peering at him over the rims of her glasses. "You family. Private investigator. I have evidence relevant to the case." She let that hang in the freezing air, her gaze dragging over his scuffed boots, the worn denim, the jacket that had seen better decades. Then she picked up her desk phone, punched a 3-digit extension, and spoke into the receiver in a voice too low to carry through the glass. She hung up and nodded toward a hard plastic bench against the far wall. "Someone will be out." Bodirt didn't sit. He stood by the window, watching the heat shimmer rising off the parking lot. His Ford sat in its spot like a stray dog, waiting for its owner to come back. The minutes dragged. The massive AC units hummed overhead. The sergeant completely ignored him. The heavy security door to the left of the desk finally clicked open. The woman who walked through was younger than Bodirt expected, maybe 35, with sharp angular features and dark hair pulled back so tight it stretched the skin at her temples. She wore a tailored navy blazer over a crisp white button-down. Her only jewelry was a plain wedding band and a stainless steel watch with a face too big for her wrist. Her badge hung from a chain around her neck, and she carried a thick manila file folder tucked under one arm like a shield. She stopped a few feet away, evaluating him with the deliberate, clinical gaze of a mechanic staring down an engine block with a blown head gasket. "John Bohannon." "Detective." "I'm Detective Rivas. Isabella Rivas." She didn't offer her hand. "You want to tell me why you're taking up space in my lobby? You're on the Wembley case." "The Wembley case is active, and I'm the investigating officer." She tapped the thick folder against her thigh. "Now, you want to tell me why a private investigator with a documented history of excessive violence and a revoked license is active, is inserting himself into an ongoing missing persons investigation." "I'm not inserting myself. I was hired by Patricia Wembley. She didn't think this department was doing its job." Rivas's jaw tightened. The movement was small, barely a twitch, but Bodirt caught it. He saw her fingers dig into the cardboard folder, and her weight shift onto her back foot. She'd been waiting for that line. She had probably heard it from every terrified parent who walked through these doors, leaving with nothing but a case number and a glossy pamphlet about runaway resources. "Mrs. Wembley is entitled to her opinion," Rivas said, her voice smooth and cold. "She's also entitled to throw her money at whoever she wants. But you don't get to interfere with my work. You don't get to interview witnesses, you don't contaminate crime scenes, And you sure as hell don't present yourself as law enforcement. You cross those lines, I will have you arrested and booked before the sun goes down. Do we understand each other? I understand perfectly. Good. Rivas turned on her heel, starting back toward the security door. I'll have the sergeant buzz you out. I found the storage unit. Rivas stopped dead. Her back was to him, the navy blazer pulling tight across her shoulders. For 2 full seconds, she didn't move a muscle. When she finally turned around, her face was a carefully constructed blank slate. What storage unit? The one where your Mr. Goodtime keeps his collection. 9 Polaroids of young women, dates written on the bottom of each one, stretching back 2 years. 7 cufflinks laid out in a glass case. An empty slot waiting for number 8. The AC is running 24 hours a day to keep everything preserved just right. Bodirt pulled the CVS camera from his jacket and held it up in the fluorescent light. I got pictures. Rivas stared at the cheap plastic camera. Her expression remained neutral, but Bodirt saw the heavy steel doors locking down behind her eyes. She walked back toward him, her heels clicking sharply against the tile, stopping close enough that he could catch the faint, unexpected scent of floral perfume. Where did you get that camera, Bohannon? Where do you think? You broke into a storage unit. You compromised a lock that wasn't yours, entered a private space without legal consent, and photographed someone else's property. That's breaking and entering. That's illegally obtained evidence. You just handed any half-decent defense attorney a motion to dismiss. You want to talk about things getting dismissed? There are 9 girls on that wall, Detective. 9. And your department filed Chloe Wembley as a routine runaway. Rivas's hand twitched. For a split second, Bodirt thought she was going to grab the camera. Instead, her fingers curled into a tight fist at her side. She took a slow, deep breath, counting backward in her head. Bodirt had seen that specific breathing technique before. It was what good cops did when they were desperately trying not to hit someone. You think I don't know, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You think I don't know what's hanging on that wall? You think I don't know about the cufflinks, the dates, the specific victimology? I've known for 6 months. Ever since the second girl went missing. I built the profile. I'm the one who gave him the name, Mr. Goodtime, because that's what the terrified witnesses called him. The ones who managed to get away. She stepped closer, the professional distance evaporating. Up close, Bodirt saw the fine, exhausted lines framing her eyes, the permanent mark of staring at computer screens at 2 in the morning when the rest of the precinct was dark. I took that profile to my captain, Rivas said, her anger finally bleeding through. I took it to the lieutenant, the major, and the assistant chief. I laid out the mo. I told them we had a highly organized serial predator operating in Palm Beach County, targeting young women, and that if we didn't act immediately, he was going to escalate. She stopped. Her fist opened and closed against her thigh. They told me to close the file. They told me Mr. Goodtime was a phantom, a statistical anomaly that only existed in my spreadsheets. They told me to focus on active cases with bodies, physical evidence, and suspects they could actually put in front of a grand jury. They told me to wait. How many bodies have to pile up before they let you work your own case? Rivas's eyes flashed. You think I don't ask myself that every time my alarm goes off? You think I don't look at those faces and wonder which one is going to finally bleed enough to get their attention? She yanked the folder from under her arm, flipped it open, and pulled out an 8x10 glossy. She shoved it toward Bodirt's chest. Sarah Keene. The same photograph the manager Earl had shown him at the storage facility. Sarah Keene. 23, Rivas recited, the details burned into her memory. Disappeared from her shift at a seafood restaurant on February 16th. Last seen, getting into a dark sedan. The witness described the driver as a white male in his 40s, clean-shaven, wearing a light-colored suit. Said he had a nice smile. Said he seemed like a real gentleman. She shoved Sarah's photo to the back and pulled the next one. Maria Santos, 19. Vanished from a bus stop on June 3rd. Last seen talking to a well-dressed man in a light-colored sedan. Witness said he was friendly. Liked his smile. Rivas snapped the folder shut and jammed it back under her arm. I have 6 more in here. 6 more faces, 6 more witnesses who saw a nice man in a nice car. I have the profile, the timeline, the suspect description. I have everything except a corpse, a name, and a captain with enough spine to let me do my job. Bodirt looked at the thick manila folder. But you knew about the storage unit. I suspected a storage unit. I didn't know which one. These places are cash only, the rental records are paper, and the managers hate cops. We put out a bolo for the sedan and pulled a list of facilities within a 20-mile radius of the abduction sites. But without a name, without probable cause, without a judge signing a warrant. She let the sentence hang in the freezing air. So you sat on it. I sat on it while I worked the cases they actually assigned me. I waited for this guy to make a mistake. A traffic violation, a fingerprint left on a gas pump, anything that would give me the leverage to bypass my captain and go straight to a judge. She stared at the disposable camera in Bodirt's hand. The frustration in her eyes morphed into something darker. Envy. And then you show up, she said bitterly. A disgraced pie with a violence jacket, who doesn't give a damn about the Fourth Amendment. You cracked that lock, walked right in, and photographed the Holy Grail. And now you have evidence I can't touch. Evidence that would poison my entire case, the second a defense attorney filed for discovery. You want to arrest me. I want to arrest you so badly, my teeth ache, Rivas said, taking a deliberate step back to put space between them. But I'm not going to. Because you have a location. You have the timeline, confirming my profile. And if I lock you up, that evidence goes into an evidence locker, the chain of custody breaks, and this guy keeps hunting. So how do we play this? Rivas glanced over her shoulder at the security doors, then at the desk sergeant, who was aggressively pretending not to listen. She lowered her voice to a hum. You walk out of my lobby. You take your drugstore camera and your illegally obtained photos and you follow your leads. You rattle the cages I can't touch. You find me something clean. Something that didn't come from a busted padlock. You're outsourcing your badge. I want you to find Chloe Wembley before she becomes Polaroid number 8. And when you find something real, something I can actually use to secure a warrant, you call me. You don't call the mother. You don't leak it to the press. You call me directly. She pulled a stark white business card from her blazer pocket and held it out. It listed her name, rank, and a direct cell number. Nothing else. Bodirt took it and slid it into his jacket beside the camera. And if I corner him before you get your piece of paper? Rivas's expression went dead flat. Then you do what you do, Bohannon. And I do what I have to do. Which is hunt you down and make sure whatever happens next happens inside a courtroom. The courtroom hasn't done much for those 9 girls. No, it hasn't. She studied his face for a long moment, reassessing him. You know what the old-timers in this building say about you. They say you used to be the best tracker we had. They say you found the people no one else could find, and you closed the cases that were supposed to stay open. They also say I beat a suspect half to death in a Winn-Dixie parking lot. They say that too. She nodded toward the glass exit doors. Go. Find the girl. Hand me something I can use. And for God's sake, stay out of my way while you do it. Bodirt turned and walked toward the exit, the camera pressing a hard line against his ribs. He pushed through the heavy glass, trading the sterile chill of the precinct for the suffocating humidity of the parking lot. He climbed into the Ford, the brown vinyl seats burning through his jeans, and pulled Revis's card from his pocket. A name and a number. The heavy weight of a 6-month bottleneck waiting to blow. He fired up the engine and looked back at the building. Through the glare of the glass lobby doors, he could see Revis still standing there watching him. She still had the folder tucked under her arm, guarding the faces of 9 girls who had been waiting far too long for someone to break the rules. She wasn't the political appointee he'd expected. She wasn't a PR-friendly diversity hire, playing it safe for a promotion. She was a furious, handcuffed cop waiting for a match to strike. Bodirt shifted the truck into gear and pulled out onto Federal Highway. The card sat on the passenger seat. The camera sat in his pocket. The road stretched out flat and white under the brutal sun. He had a name. Mr. Goodtime. A ghost who collected young women and pinned them to a wall. Bodirt pressed his boot down on the accelerator, listening to the Ford's engine roar in protest, and drove faster.